Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hi, my name's Professor Shyguy. I make chiptune music and sing songs and stuff, and I'm going to talk about Half-Life 2 because I love it. I remember playing Half-Life 1 a lot, and I loved it. And going back now, I can see how it still feels kind of alive and stuff, and characters are talking to you as you're walking around. Characters are talking to each other. It's brilliant. There wasn't a game before that I can remember that did that. But something about Half-Life 2, the graphics were just better enough. The faces were believable. You start on that train, you just see, it's, in the first one you're seeing a science building with people talking to each other. The other one, you're seeing a city where people are in line for things that have nothing to do with you. You see functioning environmental storytelling way more than one. And fun little mechanic things like the classic Combine knocking the can off and making you pick it up. It's functional, but it also shows you the world you're living in, because they're going to beat you up until you do what they want, and you get there and you feel helpless. You don't feel... that's in the first game too. You feel like just a scientist, but you're back to feeling like you have no power. And it doesn't feel arbitrary, that's the new location you're in. And if you could get a gun... It's also the first game I remember doing the physics sim stuff. And not just a arbitrary, you need to do this to make this happen. You had to stack those boxes and make them stay because physics felt... That's the first game that physics felt real. That blew my mind. I still get goosebumps thinking about the first time I kind of realized that. Whenever you have to get stacked boxes on a little ramp so that you can have enough weight, because your body has weight, to jump off the ramp to get to this little hole in the wall. Man, of course the gravity gun later, and just knocking things. I remember just hitting things with boxes just to see it happen. It was amazing. But yeah, and then you get to Alex. And boy, I'll remember Alex forever. That sounds weird. But I've never felt, I don't know if I still have, as connected to that character, believable as something that's alive. There have been characters that have been more convincing, but just the situation of that one being the first one I've seen, and it was a huge jump from the scientists in the first one with all the same voice, they were great. All the soldiers with the same voice, they felt, they had good personalities and stuff, but Alex had facial expressions and believable ones, especially for the time, and a whole story, and you traveled along with just her, and y'all did things together, and it really drew you in. Her dad was convincing, and other people were too, but you were a team, and it really drew you in. And you meet the dog, and she has a pet, and the dog feels like it has a big, thick personality. Oh, what an incredible game. And then you start going through the city, even thicker, in the back alleys, and you start running through these apartment buildings that are all broken down, and people are just hiding and closing doors to get away from you because they're scared. It just felt tense, and the only thing I didn't love about it, it wasn't that it was a maze, but you would be in this area and you would have to just search for what's the one random spot you have to go to get to the next area. It's linear. And just let it be linear. When it's going in a linear fashion, the momentum stays intense and great, and a lot of those parts don't feel alive. If you're doing that through the city, you got to find which alleyway. You get to see a city, you get to see people talking and complaining and trying to be quiet about the Combine. But if you're in the train area, you're just nothing's moving. Maybe a Combine shot at me, and now I'm just looking for a thing. It's fine. It's still one of my favorite games in the entire world. Super Metroid is one of my favorite games in the entire world, and that's kind of the whole thing with Super Metroid. Keep going back until you find the right thing. But you're still fighting and stuff on Super Metroid, and things respawn and all that. Anyway, the tripods were also a key moment in feeling amazed, because they were huge, and you were right below them. They were walking over you, so you really got close to them. It wasn't like other games where you fight something big, and you don't feel like you're right there looking up at it. especially if it's, of course, a third-person game, stuff like that. But this one, man, those felt scary and big. And, man, I've played Half-Life Alyx. I've played the VR version, and they're also really intimidating and crazy there. But, you know, I've seen a lot of stuff like that, and they look bigger, not in VR. There were some amazing moments, of course, in Half-Life Alyx. But I guess just the nostalgia paint makes the Striders seem bigger and scarier in Half-Life 2, because it was a first thing. There were some firsts in Half-Life Alyx for sure, but those were like more immersive versions of things and not new versions of things, sort of. So it wasn't a first, it was just more immersive and incredible, but didn't stick with me as hard as Half-Life 2 still does. And I'd gone back and played them both again. Well, Half-Life 2 a bunch of times. And even then, I still get lost sometimes in the areas where it's like run around till you find the right little hole in the wall. Half-Life Alyx does that too. It's one of their mechanics. Anyway, I feel like that game was a huge, of course, change in gaming in general. I can't think of a game before that. There probably is, but with an escort mission situation. And if there was, then it was probably annoying. Because a lot of escort missions, I don't know if that's the game that's responsible for them, but people did it kind of wrong where they give you this helpless person that can't path. The fact that Alyx wasn't helpless helped a lot. It's kind of like Elizabeth in Bioshock Infinite, which is also an amazing game that definitely seems like this was a huge influence on that. I'm sure other games were going for physics. Some of the games might have even got them out first, but I don't remember those games. And same with super believable characters. I mean, it wasn't as easy to try any game and see videos of any game back then, but I can't think of a game even around that game with characters nearly as believable. But the escort missions, I don't know if that... Like Garth Brooks. I like Garth Brooks. He did this poppy country thing, but then country music after that turned into something I hated because everybody was trying to be like Garth Brooks, and they all sucked at it, in my opinion. And I feel like that's kind of what happened with the escort mission. Half-Life created something incredible, and then other people mimicked it badly. They got better about it. People have been mad about escort missions forever, and now usually they're not helpless. Because, I mean, Last of Us, that's absolutely one of my favorite games, too, and that's a whole... she's not helpless. And like I said, Bioshock Infinite, like, it also inspired incredible games. And I never thought about that until just now. That might be why I love those games so much. I mean, they're renowned. They're very well-respected games, but they're also doing the kind of Half-Life thing where you're running around with somebody who isn't helpless, but you're also kind of their protector in those games. But Elizabeth is super powerful and Infinite, and in Last of Us, though, you kind of feel like a protector, and I love that game, so I should probably look inward on that a bit. But in Half-Life 2, Alyx is always saving your butt, so it doesn't feel like an escort mission, it feels like a team. But anyway, the story and like lore of Half-Life 2 also feels very fleshed out. I think that's obviously very important for storytelling, for the people to write a bunch of stuff that they don't even include in the story, like in the dialogue or anything. Even if it's maybe a reference to something that feels like they're really talking about a thing that they thought about a bunch rather than just a little throwaway line. It's a hard thing to describe, but I feel like it has that in the game. Like, I feel like everything they're saying, everything that's... like Bloodborne, like FromSoft games. They don't tell you almost anything. You gotta read it or whatever, but if you see a character with a bunch of hands growing out of his back, you know they have a reason for it. Like, you know it's not just because the character design is cool. I mean, that might be why they came up with the story. They were like, I want to draw a character with a bunch of hands on his back. Let's come up with a cool backstory. But at least they usually have a cool backstory that's very elaborate, and if you can find a way to find that story out, it's very interesting, and I feel like Half-Life 2 did that, not as much, because it is obviously a very story-forward game. That's another reason it feels so alive. Anyway, the DLCs were also amazing. They moved the story along. They didn't finish the story. I'll spoil Half-Life 2, but Half-Life Alyx does finish the story. I'm not going to say how it does, but I'm glad they gave it some kind of something. I don't want to say too much. that one's not as easily accessible. It has a barrier to entry. But, anyway. Happy gaming.
Hey there, Screen Beans. Have you heard about Screen Snark?
Rachel, this is an ad break. They aren't Screen Beans until they listen to the show.
Fine. Potential Screen Beans. You like movies and TV shows, right?
I mean, who doesn't? Screen Snark is a casual conversation about the movies and television shows that are shaping us as we live our everyday lives.
That's right, Matt. We have a chat with at least one incredible guest every episode, hailing from all walks. We've interviewed chefs,
Writers, costumers, musicians,
yoga teachers, comedians, burlesque dancers,
folks in the film and TV industry,
and more.
We'd be delighted for you to join us every other Monday on the Certain POV Podcast Network.
Or wherever you get your podcasts, fresh and tasty off the presses.
What? That's not...
Can I call them Screen Beans now?
Fine.
Screen Beans!
So tune in and we'll see you at the movies or on a couch somewhere.
'Cause you're all Screen Beans now.
You will be mine. Aurora.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.